Hey Tubies, it's Psychic Bob. Well, it is so awesome to be with you. Well, I'm sitting here attaching pins on my magical jacket. If you saw a few weeks ago, I did a video about my magical jacket, and my mom helped me get it ready. I got it all cleaned up, and we put these patches on it, the triquetra over here. I got the pentacle on this side. And I told you guys as I added more stuff to it, I'd show it to you. So today I've got some more pins I've been putting on. I thought you'd like to see them. Over on this side above the pinnacle, I got these really cool witch pins. I don't know if you can see it. This one is two witches. We got some glare here, stirring a cauldron, which I really love. And this one's a little witch flying on a broom, which I think is really precious. So I'm enjoying both of these. And then over on the other side here, I put some more pins. And over here we got the triquetra patch. And I got another witch. You guys, I think, saw this one last time. But I got another little witch flying on a broom. And then I got the mystical sigil of the gateway of the Necronomicon. We're going to talk about that today. And then down here I've got a really cool historical pin. It's from the Chinese days of Mao Zedong. It's an actual Chinese Mao pin. Mao was loved in China back in the day, and this is actually a historic one from the 70s. Now, just so you know, Psychic Bob is not a communist. I'm not supporting atheism. But, you know, I have done some readings of Mao Zedong, and I actually like some of the things he said. You know, he does say that people should rise against oppression. And, you know, I think that's important. And, you know, whether you like Mao Zedong and China or not, the fact is that he was about helping his people. And I think Mao Zedong gives, at least for me, the reminder that we must challenge authority and that we must stand on principle. And whether you agree with him or not on most of what he said, I think on those points there's truth. So I'm wearing this little pin because I just think it's kind of a cool little piece of history. And Mao reminds me to stand and to not give in to oppression. So that's what it represents to be. But you know, here I got this cool jacket, and I'm telling you, I haven't really been able to wear it. It's been so warm. It's again in the 80s here today in Alexandria. And you know, it's funny, it's actually cooler inside my house than it is outside. So there you go. But anyways, I got my jacket on. How you like it? Got my pins on. We're styling. Anyways, I'm glad you're here. Well, you know, this pin I was showing you about, the sigil of the gateway. We're going to talk a little bit about this today. And this actually ties in with UFO Friday, because today we're going to talk about the concept of extra-dimensional reality, extra-dimensional beings, and what that could mean to the world. I'm reading an interesting book called H.P. Lovecraft, The Master of Horror's Influence on Modern Occultism. And this is written by John L. Studman. Really good book. In this book, it talks about the writings of H.P. Lovecraft. Now, for those of you who don't know who H.P. Lovecraft is, he was an occult author in the 1920s and the 1930s. He died in 1937, way before his time. He was very young when he died. But he left a bunch of literature that has been a lot of fun, a lot of mysticism. Just to give you some background, in his writings, he proposed these stories. He always had a story about beings that were coming to the earth, and he used to describe them as being from beyond the stars or other worlds and dimensions, and somehow they would come into the earth, and it was always scary and dramatic. And if you haven't read his stories, I really recommend that you read him, because one, it's just fun. They're just fun stories. They're fictional. H.P. Lovecraft never did claim to believe in the entities that he wrote about. But what is interesting is that many people have studied magic, particularly like ceremonial magic and evocative magic, where you conjure spirits to appearance, have read the stories of H.P. Lovecraft and said, this guy is touching actually on occult truths. Even though he's writing fiction, he's actually opening real occult doorways. And so during his life, people started to discover this, and they used to interview him, and they'd say, well, H.P. Lovecraft, by the way, H.P. stands for Howard Phillips. That was his name, Howard Phillips Lovecraft. They used to say, H.P., do you practice magic? Are you an occultist, a ritual magician, a witch? And he used to say, oh, no, I'm an atheist, a materialist. I don't believe in any of this. And what he used to say is that he believed in physics. He believed in science and material reality and a mechanistic universe. But what's interesting is when you go into his stories, they are so otherworldly. It's almost hard to believe that he didn't have some spiritual awareness. Well, what's interesting is people of the day really became fascinated, and they started pressing him, like, there's more to this than you're telling us. And during that time, now you have to remember this is during the 1920s, things like relativity, the theory of relativity, time dimensions, all this was starting to be discovered in the world of physics. So quantum physics, all this was just starting. And H.P. Lovecraft did believe in physics, as he said in several interviews. And one of the things that he always has in his story is he usually has a character, not in every story, but a lot of stories, where you have a character who has these strange dreams. And in the dreams, the character feels like he's walking between dimensions. Well, when they actually interviewed H.P. Lovecraft about this, he said that through his study of physics, he had come to believe that there could be the possibility of other dimensional realities. And when they asked him, well, where did you get your idea for these dimensions besides just physics? And he said, throughout my life, I had very strange dreams. And he said, it could be possible, I suppose, that in my dreams, I did in some weird way transcend dimensions. Now, he didn't absolutely say, oh, I believe there's other worlds and spirits and gods. But he did say, from a physics perspective, it might actually be possible. Well, people who have studied his writings have really come to say that, you know what, there is true magic in his works. Now, he does admit to having done a little bit of study on ceremonial magic, just as some background for his books. But what's interesting is that many of his characters' ideas that they espouse and their experiences truly fit into occultism beyond just what the printed works are. And many magicians and ceremonial magical people, even some witches, have said that the magic of H.P. Lovecraft in his books could be a valid ceremonial working. Like the way the conjurations are done, that they're actually valid magical practices. Now, what's also interesting in this book is the author talks about the other occult influences at the same time. And during the 1920s, Aleister Crowley, who is a famous occultist magician, was actively doing occult rituals to raise entities. And they show in this book how some of the work of Aleister Crowley, who was not friends with H.P. Lovecraft, they had no connection, both revealed through their experiences beings that were very similar. And this gives the rise to the question of, like, okay, if Crowley was actually doing conjurations and had real experiences, could it be that H.P. Lovecraft was touching in, perhaps not consciously, but unconsciously, to a similar vibration, and that the works in the mysticism of Crowley have a validity in relation to the works of H.P. Lovecraft? That the speculation is that H.P. Lovecraft also was connecting and conjuring, but on a subconscious level, an unconscious level, that in his sleep he would literally transgress dimensions, cross dimensional doorways, and have experiences that he brought back that came into his writings. Very interesting. This book, I'm not all the way through it. I'm only about halfway through, but this is what, has me thinking, because in this book, one of the speculations that the author brings up is that many of H.P. Lovecraft's entities are beings who claim to be from out of other worlds and that they've come to the earth. And here in Spirit Channel on UFO Friday, we talk about the concept of trans-dimensional travel, or interdimensional travel. They use the term extra-dimensional, meaning outside the current dimensions. So is it possible that some of the occultists who are bringing spirits up through their ritual magic are actually interacting with extra-dimensional beings? And could these extra-dimensional beings of H.P. Lovecraft's writing actually be real beings who other magicians have actually made direct contact? Now, see, the speculation is that H.P. Lovecraft connected with them through his sleep, in a sense, astral projection. And he himself says it may be possible to do that, though he didn't consciously set out to do it. But people like Crowley and other people of that time were saying these are beings that are extra-dimensional that we can directly contact. Now a lot of people say, oh, Aleister Crowley was just a crazy guy. It's a bunch of, craziness. But there are many reports, and you can do the research, of people who were there at the time of his workings and do claim that literally Aleister Crowley was able to bring into full three-dimensional physical reality beings from other dimensions. Now, in H.P. Lovecraft's work, they talk about Nyarlathotep. That was an entity. He was considered to be the Lord of Chaos, the Lord of, darkness. Well, when they talk about that conjuration, or they talk about that character, the energy is very similar to a spirit that Aleister Crowley conjured at the time. Now, Aleister Crowley was believed to have conjured a demonic entity named Corazon, who is also a Lord of Chaos. And when you see them, the description side by side, makes you wonder, did H.P. Lovecraft tap into a current? There are people who have actually taken various occult rituals from his writings and put them into actual ritual formats and done the rituals as they appear in the book, and have claimed to have had experiences, like real connections to visible appearance to entities. Interestingly, in H.P. Lovecraft's works, there's always kind of a secret underground cultural dimension. Like, for example, they'll have a situation where a person will walk into a town, right? And they'll be kind of shunned and not really welcome. And during the middle of the night, supposedly this character might get up and walk through the streets and end up in an area like a park, a far corner of the city, and discover that there are 1,000 people holding a ritual at 1 a.m. in the morning. That the whole town is in on a cultural, cultic dimension, and that they're doing a conjuration. And usually in the stories of H.P. Lovecraft, the person will discover, oh my God, everybody in the town is part of this cult. No wonder they didn't include me. And they'll usually see some horrific thing appear in their circle of conjuration. Very dramatic stuff. But it all opens the concept of, could there be also people who are hidden occultists, who have actively mastered the arts of conjuration of these beings, and they are bringing them into our dimension. This is very important because, when we talk about the UFO phenomena, I have talked to people who have told me, they said, Bob, some of the aliens are just like us, are human, but I've had some people say they've encountered aliens who don't fit any of the current descriptions. They'll say, well, they weren't really the gray aliens, and they weren't the Pleiadians. They were strange beings that were geometric shaped, or they looked like animals, or, strange things. And most of the people I've talked to have said they've encountered these, have said that they believe, and it's their belief, that these aliens have the ability to travel between dimensions. See, a lot of times when we see the UFO craft in the sky, that's one type of alien who actually physically goes from planet to planet to planet through a craft of physical means. But at the same time, many people have said they've seen these alien ships literally blink out as if they just disappear from our reality. So I've always said, and I've proposed this, in relation to this, that there are beings who have the ability not only to travel interdimensionally, but they themselves are extra-dimensional, meaning they didn't originate in this physical cosmos, this time cycle, that perhaps they come from another dimension altogether and have somehow crossed into our world. This is another book that I got that you might want to check out. You can buy this at Barnes & Noble. This is all fictional, this book. This is the writings of H.P. Lovecraft. It's called The Complete Cthulhu's Mythos Tales. And there's a picture of Cthulhu on the front. But it's pretty intense stories, in this. Anyways, but I'm not gonna read it all because it's kind of long. But definitely check out the writings of H.P. Lovecraft. And maybe you've read H.P. Lovecraft, but it might be interesting to go back and reread it and think about it from the case of reality. Could there be beings that are extra-dimensional that are coming into the earth? In a lot of this book, they speculate that these beings may actually be real because so many people that are unconnected have done conjurations and had literally the exact same experience. So there does seem to be if you want to put it in a standard term, a scientific reality. Scientific in the sense that you can have a measured response. You can have a calculated effort that leads to a replicable, a duplicable response. And if we're doing magical conjurations and we are doing them to visible appearance, then there can be an objective reality that can be captured, I believe. So, I'm very interested in understanding more about this. Now, I don't necessarily agree with everything this author says in this book, so I'm not being a blind supporter of it, because he has a whole chapter in here about Wicca, which I think is kind of strange, because he makes the argument that Wicca is a black magical system, part of the black magic tradition. I don't agree with that. But when I read how he defines black magic, under his definition, which I don't necessarily agree with, I suppose you could call Wicca black magic. I don't practice black magic in the sense of curses and violence against people. But the way he defines black magic is that any magic that is not necessarily for direct connection to the divine. For example, in his tradition, or in his definitions, white magic is a magical system where it's about the human being attaining connection with the divine. Just pure, mental psychic connection. He says the black magic is the tradition where people acquire power to do an act on the earth for themselves or for others. He does specify that black magic doesn't necessarily have to be an evil act. For example, if I do a ritual to do healing and to help somebody's bones mend or their heart mend, by his definition, that's black magic, because I'm helping a person rather than purely just connecting to divine energy. According to him, white magic is more just personal ascension, whereas black magic is affecting the physical dimension. So I don't know. That's an interesting concept, but I personally don't associate Wicca with black magic, but he does in this book. So that's one of the things that got me interested, because as I was looking through it, he has a whole chapter here on Wicca. Here it is, Lovecraft and the Wiccan Religion. It's right in the contents. So, it's interesting to consider. I just want to bring that here to you today, because I think when we're talking about these alien realities, I think there really can be, and really actually is, an occultic dimension as well. So for those of you who are very scientific minded, say, well, I only believe in the physical reality, I only believe that aliens are beings that have evolved in the natural cosmos. I believe that as well. I don't discredit that. But I have to say, as somebody who's a ufologist, as a psychic, somebody who deals with people who come to me, because I have a lot of people come to me who've had experiences. Some of them have been traumatized by the experiences. Some have been enlightened. I have to say, I have encountered people who have themselves directly told me that they have experienced an extra-dimensional reality in relation to aliens. And this book, I think, really gives you a lot to think about. I'm not saying you have to agree with everything in it, but I think it's worth a look at. So you might want to check this out. It's called H.P. Lovecraft and the Black Magical Tradition. And the subtitle is The Master of Horror's Influence on Modern Occultism. So definitely check it out. And again, it's by John L. Stedman. There you go. John L. Stedman. So, there you go. Anyways, that's what we're going to talk about for UFO Friday. And I want you to tell me in the box below, what is your opinion on aliens? Do you think they're just simply physical beings from this dimension? Or are they extra-dimensional? Could they be extra-dimensional? Have you ever encountered a being that is extra-dimensional? Have you ever done a ritual magic conjuration and discovered that a being appeared that has an alien element that you felt as if it was not just a spirit, but it was a being from another dimension that was what we would term like extraterrestrial? I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. Anyways, let's have a discussion. Put your comments in the box below. Well, guys, thanks for being here. I love you guys. I'm sending you my blessings today on UFO Friday. Keep it here. Tomorrow is Saturday. You know what that means? Saturday night seance. You don't want to miss it. Be here. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. I love you guys. And until then, may you always blessed be.